This is part 2 of this Back to the Future prophecy video. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, you need to, and I'll leave the link to part 1 in the description box below this video. In 7 separate instances in the Bible, it is said that the period of the Antichrist king's rule will be for 1,260 days. It is also said that the Antichrist king will rule the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, exactly 1,260 days after the Royals won the World Series in 2015 was the day a fire broke out on the royal portico area of the Temple Mount. This fire in the royal portico area of the Temple Mount occurred on the date in the Hebrew calendar of Nisan 10. It was on the 10th day of the month of Nisan that the King of the Jews, the King of Kings, officially entered Jerusalem in his triumphal entry while riding on a donkey. After this, Jesus cleansed the money exchangers from the royal portico area of the Temple Mount. From the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes judgment. For example, Jesus judged the nation of Israel after he healed 10 lepers, 9 of which were Jews and did not thank him and praised God. Only the one foreigner gave thanks and praised God. This is why this 9-hour church roof fire occurred on the 10th of the month of Nisan. This is also why, for example, on the 10th of Nisan date in 2021, 9 of the 10 people that were killed in the King supermarket shooting in Boulder, Colorado, were civilians. The 10th death was a police officer. This 9 out of 10 deaths occurred on the date of the 10th of Nisan, the date that the King of Kings judged the unrighteous and cleansed the Temple Mount. It occurred in the King supermarket in the Table Mesa area of Boulder, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver, the highest major city in America. Mesa is Spanish for a high plateau area of a mountain, which is essentially what the Temple Mount area is in Jerusalem. This Table Mesa neighborhood hints at the Temple Mount, and this King Super shooting occurred on the date the King of Kings cleansed the Temple Mount. On this same 10th of Nisan date, and the fire on the royal portico area of the Temple Mount, the area that Jesus cleansed, was the 9-hour fire on the roof of the Notre Dame Cathedral. All of this communicated Jesus coming to cleanse his church. In the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes judgment, and this 9 hours roof fire of the Notre Dame Cathedral was a judgment warning for the church, because on the day of Pentecost, which symbolizes the church, it was tongues of fire that came down on the disciples in the upper room. Hence the church roof fire that was 9 hours long on the same day on Nisan 10 as the fire on the royal portico area of the Temple Mount. And all of this was symbolic communication of the coming cleansing of Jesus' church. A cleansing and testing of the church is the main purpose of the end times judgment period. The 726th word in the Bible, Strong's G726, is the word for rapture, which is the event that will occur at the beginning of the end times period when the faithful followers of Jesus that are worthy of escaping the things that are coming soon and be rescued from the coming judgment end times period. 726 days after this church roof fire on the 10th of Nisan was the 10th of April, a month typically associated with the month of Nisan in 2021. On this day, the residents of Kingston on the island of St. Vincent woke up to a layer of ash covering their homes and streets after the fiery eruption of the island's volcano. Every news media story mentioned that the population of Kingston is 110,000 and that the ash had traveled 110 miles to the island of Barbados. Nisan 10 was also the date that Joshua led the Hebrews across the Jordan River and into the Promised Land, which is rapture symbolism, and Joshua died at the age of 110. On the day of the volcanic eruption, Prince Philip, which is king symbolism, died at the age of 99, on the 9th of the month, which is more symbolism for the judgment of the King of Kings in the end times period of Jesus cleansing his church before his return at his second coming. 99 years old and 110,000 residents is also another of countless pairings of the numbers 9 and 110, which, as other videos explain, confirm the signs and connections and point to the 9/11 judgment warning when the 110 stories of the Twin Towers collapsed, which parallels the walls of security of Jericho that collapsed after Joshua led the Hebrews around the walls after crossing the Jordan River. On the main facade of the Notre Dame Cathedral is the famous Gallery of the Kings. 28 statues of kings of Judah from the Bible are displayed on the west facade. These statues of the kings of Judah were decapitated in the French Revolution by the bloodthirsty mob that wanted to kill more French royalty. Also, the Notre Dame Cathedral is famous for housing the crown of thorns that Jesus wore, the King of Kings and the King of the Jews. The Notre Dame Cathedral fire, with its crown of thorns and its gallery of kings, burned 1,260 days after the Royals were crowned kings of baseball, 30 years after the first time they were crowned kings of baseball. The writer and director of the movie Back to the Future, Robert Zemeckis, unknowingly wrote a baseball prophecy when he predicted that the Cubs would win the World Series in 2015. Instead, the Cubs finally broke their curse of the Billy Goat, which is Antichrist king symbolism, in 2016, and the Royals won their second World Series in 2015, which was exactly 30 years, and 30 years symbolizes a king after their first World Series win in 1985. 1985 and 2015 happen to be the 2 years in which the movie Back to the Future takes place. In another amazing coincidence, in October 2015, the month that the Royals won the World Series, the month of his baseball prophecy that he wrote back in the 1980s, a movie Robert Zemeckis directed was released that told the story of Philippe Petit, the French tightrope artist that evaded security and walked across the Twin Towers shortly after they first opened. There are a number of uncanny coincidences between the movie Back to the Future and this movie The Walk, not the least of which is that without a doubt, God used the prophecy in the movie Back to the Future, which was about Marty's warning to Doc about a terrorist attack at the Twin Pines Mall, in order to point to the 9/11 judgment warning. Just for example, in the movie, the Twin Pines Mall sign later becomes the Lone Pine Mall sign, which hints at the Twin Towers replaced by the One World Tower. And the time on the sign, read upside down, reads 9/11. And the time difference between the two signs is 17 minutes. The Twin Towers on 9/11 were struck 17 minutes apart. And speaking of Robert Zemeckis' baseball prophecy and the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series, the famous rain delay after the game was tied after 9 innings in Game 7 is famously known as the 17-minute rain delay. The movie The Walk was dedicated to the victims that died on 9/11. The Walk is about a wire that Philippe Petit walked across, and the movie Back to the Future is about Doc helping Marty get back to the future through rigging a wire to the clock tower that is struck by lightning. Philippe Petit is a French famous high wire artist who is famous for having walked between the two towers of the Notre Dame Cathedral. The Notre Dame Cathedral is known for having 2 twin towers. This walk between these 2 towers of the Notre Dame Cathedral in 1971 is what inspired Philippe Petit to pull off what he called his coup, which was evading authorities and walking a tightrope between the 2 twin towers in Manhattan. Philippe Petit's tightrope walk across a wire, along with his balancing pole, engenders a cross with a man at the center. The most central prophecy in the Bible, the 70 weeks prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, regards the timing of the arrival of the King of Kings, when Jesus officially arrived into Jerusalem riding on the donkey as the King of the Jews, on the date Nisan 10, before he was put to death on the cross to pay the ransom and liberate us from sin and death. Philip Petit walked across the Twin Towers in Manhattan exactly 70 weeks after they officially opened in 1973. A cross was at the top of the towers when they first opened, and then the perfectly proportioned 20-foot steel beam cross was found mysteriously standing upright in the debris field after the Twin Towers collapsed. In other words, through the Notre Dame Cathedral fire and Philip Petit, God was pointing to the 9/11 judgment warning. Through the Notre Dame Cathedral fire, God was pointing to the decapitated kings of Judah by the angry mob that had rejected their royalty and wanted to kill their royalty, and the crown of thorns, in order to point to the rejection and death of the King of Kings, the King of the Jews, in order to point to our present moment in world history and the continued rejection of Lord Jesus Christ. In Bible prophecy, a period of 42 months is mentioned 7 times in reference to the period of the Antichrist's rule in the end times. Thus, a period of time involving the number 42 in God's signs and connections can be prophetic. Exactly 42 weeks before the church roof fire on Nisan 10 at the cathedral in France that is known for its Facade of Kings was the day that French President Emmanuel Macron was in Rome to meet with Pope Francis. Bible prophecy and God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections are more than clear that Pope Francis is the first Antichrist. Barack Obama is the second Antichrist, false prophet that gets his power from the first Antichrist. The prediction for the death of Trump in this video will prove that God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is being explained on this channel, and that all of the main conclusions stated here are true. This 42 weeks connection between the Facade of Kings Cathedral fire in France and the French president in Rome with Pope Francis confirms that Macron is the leader of the 10 kings in Bible prophecy. The 10 kings that give their power to the Antichrist, Pope Francis. The Antichrist will persecute God's faithful through the VACCINE, and the name Macron is a word that means a type of notation mark in language, which hints at the mark of the Antichrist that will be used to persecute God's faithful. Macron was the first to mandate VACCINEs and require VACCINE passports to do things like travel. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming matters, as the Bible says is required to confirm a matter. Without these second witness confirmations, it is just a product of one's imagination. The second witnesses are what makes this different and unique from other things. What is a second witness to this Emmanuel Macron and Pope Francis prophetic sign and connection to the fire at the Notre Dame Cathedral that is known for its Facade of Kings is that from the day Macron and Francis met, it is exactly 2,300 days to the Day of Atonement in 2024. Judgment Day, when the Antichrists will be defeated at the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ. The evidence of second and third and multiple witnesses as high as Mount Everest in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections overwhelmingly confirms that the second coming is on the Day of Atonement in 2024. In the book of Daniel chapter 8, a period of 2,300 days is associated with the Antichrist. The Antichrist that is described in this same chapter as coming from the northwest of Jerusalem. Rome is exactly northwest of Jerusalem. Therefore, this 2,300 days connection from their meeting in Rome is stunning confirmation that Macron is the leader of the 10 kings that will give their power to Rome, the Antichrist Roman Catholic system, and Pope Francis in the end times period. In Bible prophecy, the number 666 is associated with the Antichrist. 6 plus 6 plus 6 months after Macron and Francis met was the day of the eclipse that traversed the Indian Ocean and Indonesia and was famous for its viral image of devil's horns. Other videos explain how God has used the Indian Ocean tsunami and Indonesia signs to communicate judgment on the world and identify Barack Obama, who grew up in Indonesia. He also grew up on another island in Hawaii, and on this same day was the prophetic helicopter crash in Hawaii that killed 7 people. The helicopter was operated by a company named Safari Tours, which hints at Kenya, where Obama was born. This Devil's Horns eclipse and helicopter crash occurred 60 plus 60 plus 60 months after the eclipse that only went over the Indian Ocean and Indonesia, including the city Jakarta, where Obama grew up. This eclipse was 6 days after Obama was inaugurated, and was also a prophetic 49 months after the Indian Ocean tsunami on December 26, 2024, which was an extremely prophetic 20 years before Hanukkah Day 1 and the beginning of the Messianic Age for the world in 2024. This Notre Dame Cathedral church roof fire on the date Nisan 10 communicated Jesus cleansing his church before his second coming. It also communicated that Emmanuel Macron is the leader of the 10 kings. Macron means mark, as in mark of the Antichrist. Another prophetic sign contained within this church roof fire was the dramatic fall of the rooster from the steeple. Before the rooster crowed twice, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. This is why one of the signs within this fire was the dramatic fall of this rooster. It symbolizes denying Jesus in order to go along with the Antichrist system. The mark of the Antichrist will be a test of faith and loyalty to Jesus. Taking the mark, which will involve the VACCINE, will be an act of denying Jesus. All right, before we begin this truly amazing video, today is January 23rd, and it was just learned today that on October 21st, 2023, the movie Back to the Future was re-released for one day only into theaters across the nation. They had done some re-engineering or re-updating the movie, and they released it for one day. And this gives us a very important prophetic sign. And I just wrote this morning one paragraph explaining this, and so I'll just read it. I just learned that Back to the Future was re-released in theaters for one day on October 21st, 2023. Back to the Future is about a prophecy regarding terrorists, and the Lord hinted at 9/11 through the movie series. All right, now the rest of this paragraph goes on to explain how October 21st, 2023 connects to the 24th day of the month of Shavat in the Hebrew calendar, which began at sunset on February 2nd and went to sunset on February 3rd, 2024. And that ended up being a important step in the trail of signs leading to Kamala Harris's predicted death in a plane crash on February 10th. So I'll continue to read the rest of this paragraph, but keep that in mind. The prophetic signs on that date, which include Kamala Harris's visit to South Carolina, was a step in the trail that hinted at 8 days later after February 2nd, February 10th, as the date of her predicted crash. That said, the rest of this paragraph is important, and I'm going to then follow up with another updated paragraph talking about February 2nd and February 24th, the date it is predicted that a dirty bomb will explode in Manhattan, New York City. And so stay tuned. Okay, so as I was saying, the movie Back to the Future is a prophecy regarding terrorists. But as we have seen already in this video that I have been I have been making the case that God was in fact involved and had his hand on this movie Back to the Future. And it was more than just what it appeared to be in the movie, a prophecy about Doc being shot up by terrorists in the shopping mall parking lot. It was, in fact, a prophecy from God that was predicting 9/11. Okay? Now, October 21st, 2023 is 2,520 hours, and that hints at the 2,520 days in the most central prophecy in Daniel chapter 9 that regards the period of the end times and the Antichrist. Okay? So October 21st, 2023 is 2,520 hours before the predicted terrorism in Manhattan on February 3rd. Okay, the step in the trail regarding this was the follow-up to the explosion in at the Tower 22 base in Jordan that killed 3 people, the drone attack. Okay, that will be explained in other videos as well. Okay, moving on. Just keep in mind that this is just a step, but this is valid. Okay, this connection is valid. Okay, which will be the follow-up judgment to the warning on 9/11. Incorporated into the theme of time travel in Back to the Future, there is the symbolism of out of time. This is the license plate, the vanity license plate that fell off of the DeLorean after it traveled 88 miles per hour in the movie, the iconic scene, after which Doc jumps up and down excitedly, yelling 88 miles per hour. Okay, this is because out of time, the plate hints at 9/11. Furthermore, the plate, when it falls to the ground, it spins on the ground and falls in between the 2 columns of fire that were supposed to have been left by the car wheels of the DeLorean as it began time traveling. These 2 columns of fire that were the car tracks of the vehicle were symbolic of the 2 towers on 9/11, because 9/11 was the big last-minute warning of judgment destruction, that America is out of time to repent and turn back to God. This is why on 9/11 there was the big story about the heroes of the 88th floor and the Tribute in Light art installation that commemorated the Twin Towers was made up of 88 searchlights. Also, as explained in other videos, through the 9/11 events, God pointed to George Washington, and according to Wikipedia, there are 88 places in America named Washington. Also, on 9/11, President Trump, Donald Trump, famously called into Channel 9 News and mentioned that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. The point is without explaining any more of the details, Trump was a prophetic sign, and Trump in Gematria equals 88. Okay? And if you don't know what Gematria is, Roman, Greek, and Hebrew letters are also numbers, and as such, names and words can be converted into a numeric value. Okay? All right. 2,520 hours is 105 days. Just so you know. Shavat 24 begins, so again, it was the date we were looking at was Shavat 24. All right, and that's 104 days after the movie Back to the Future was released. In Back to the Future, the clock tower, and that was the day of the signs, by the way. It ended up being February 2nd, because Shavat 24 began on February 2nd. Anyway, that is 104 days. And in the movie Back to the Future, the clock tower flyer from the clock tower lady that is given to Michael J. Fox has the time of the lightning strike on the tower, as in the Twin Towers that were struck by the planes on 9/11, the time that it says that the lightning struck the tower was 10:04 p.m. And that's what's hinted at with this 104 days in this connection from the movie Back to the Future. Okay, and the plot of the movie, if you recall, is all about harnessing the power of the lightning. Doc does this with a wire, and that is what sends Michael J. Fox back into the future. All right, so on 9/11, the towers were struck by planes. It is also predicted that on February 2nd to 3rd, that Harris's plane will be struck by a bird. Okay, so striking of a strike. Okay, so anyway, this is the update here. Back to the Future was re-released for one day on October 21st, 2023. This is exactly 4 times 4 weeks before Kamala Harris's predicted crash on February 10th, 2024. The reason why this is relevant is because to confirm his signs and patterns and connections, God frequently pairs the numbers 23 and 44 together. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required, and this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And one simple way in which he would provide a second witness for us, if we think about it, is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44. And I know this because I have been studying God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections from morning until night for more than full-time hours for 6 years. Basically, 23 and 44 is because the 44th president was the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. Okay. So that is why God uses Michael Jackson, Michael J. Fox, and Michael Jordan in his signs. One reason is because, and Mike Johnson, the current Speaker of the House, the Republican representative. This is because MJ in simple English gematria equals 23. Okay? So MJ, as in Michael J. Fox, is 23 in simple English gematria, making this 4 times 4 weeks connection from the release or the re-release of the movie starring Michael J. Fox, a pairing of 23 and 44 that confirms the signs and connections. As well, Fox hints at 666, which in Bible prophecy is the number of the Antichrist. This is because F is the 6th letter of the alphabet, O is the 15th letter, and 15 hints at 1 plus 5 equals 6, and X is the 24th letter, which hints at 2 plus 4 equals 6. So, MJ Fox, as in 23 and 666, as in the Antichrist Barack Obama, because his number is 23. Okay, so Michael J. Fox fell onto the couch on the stage at the Back to the Future panel at a fan expo exactly 6 plus 6 plus 6 weeks. Because, again, Fox equals 666. And so Fox fell on the couch exactly 6 times 6 times 6 weeks after Michelle, which is hinted at by Michael, because Michelle is the feminine of Michael, was on the river in Paris during the Notre Dame Cathedral fire. Okay, her boat, in fact, had to be redirected because the cathedral is on an island in the middle of the Paris River, the Seine River. Anyway, on the day that Michael J. Fox fell onto the couch, was the plane crash of the plane owned by the company named Encore, which is French, which means again. And specifically in English, the borrowed word from French means again as in a repeat performance, which of course hints at the second repeat presidency of Barack Obama as a result of Kamala Harris's plane crash, which is why the plane was named Encore. The plane flew, before it crashed, flew over Washington, D.C., which resulted in an F-16 being scrambled, creating a sonic boom over Washington, D.C. The F-16 hints at 4 times 4. This was the day that MJ, which equals 23, fell onto the couch. This confirms the signs and connections. And again, this day is 4 times... No, sorry. That was the release of the movie. This date was June 4th, 2023. Okay? Which is, so Fox, as in 666, fell on 6/4/23, exactly 36 weeks, which hints at 666, because 36 hints at 3 6s. It is also 6 times 6 weeks, and again, this date is preceded by exactly 6 times 6 times 6 weeks to the Michelle Obama. Oh, and by the way, she was in Paris promoting her book. The river cruise was promoting her book. It was a dinner river cruise for her promoting her book, her new book at the time, Becoming, which hinted at her becoming the Queen of England. I'm sorry, the Queen of America. And the reason for that is because this, the date of the fire and her on the river connected to the day that she hugged the Queen, which was a faux pas, which is also French, a borrowed term from French. Okay, so anyway, that's explained later in this video. But so getting back to what I was saying here, though, this date is 6 times 6 weeks, okay, which is 36 weeks. But also, 36 not only hints at 666 because it hints at 3 6s, but it's also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And also, the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, all the way up to 36 equals 666. Okay, so there you have it. This 36 weeks is astounding because it connects with MJ, Fox, which is 666, and it's preceded by exactly 6 times 6 times 6 weeks. Okay, and what I'm saying is this 36 weeks connects to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris's plane will crash, which will lead to a change in the White House in Washington, D.C., which is why exactly 36 weeks earlier was the day that MJ fell, as in Harris's crash, on the day of an airplane crash. By the way, the pilot crashed the plane because he fell unconscious. I should say he fell unconscious, just like Michael J. Fox fell. And that is because he fell unconscious due to having taken the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and is not a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. The commonly held objections based on people's understanding of Bible prophecy are answered in the must-watch snake bite video. I will not explain anymore. However, case closed when the prediction comes to pass. No more debate, period. It is the mark of the Antichrist. In its current form, it doesn't need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or a false form of religious worship or a supposed new age of dispensation following supposedly all quote-unquote Christians being raptured. Okay, it is the mark of the Antichrist. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, by the way, the thing you can't talk about. Anyway, that's why the pilot fell unconscious, and that's why he fell unconscious on the day of this fox sign, as in 666, because the thing is the mark of the Antichrist. Okay, to finish up here, the movie Back to the Future was about a prophecy that God used to warn about terrorism on 9/11 in New York City. The re-release of Back to the Future, starring MJ Fox, as in 666, on 10/21, October 21st, is exactly 6 plus 6 plus 6 weeks before the predicted terrorism in New York City and a dirty bomb on February 24th, 2024, as in the sonic boom on the day that Fox fell on the couch. Okay, that's astounding too. Okay, now this is also, this 6 plus 6 plus 6 weeks is also 126 days, which hints at 1,260 days, mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy as being the symbolic period of the Antichrist and the end times. But believe me, we are already well inside the 1,260 days, which began on May 2nd, 2021. All right? In other words, it's pretty much symbolic in the Bible, in Bible prophecy. Okay, now I understand that everyone else, except for those that are following his signs, and that's just like a handful of people, me and some friends and some people that are following on the video channel, okay, they all believe that this period of time hasn't started. But believe me, I know far better than you why God has given me a voice through this prediction. It is to prove what I just said, because it will prove that this is God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. In other words, it's an interconnected web, and at the center of the web is the Day of Atonement, Judgment Day, and the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, October 12th, 2024. And this prediction will prove everything in the web. It proves the center of the web. This cannot be, let me put it this way. Kamala Harris cannot die in a plane crash on February 10th if the second coming isn't on October 12th, 2024, okay? Anyway, enough said. You just have to take my word for it, unless you want to watch every minute of every video and you'll start to understand. And you should do that anyway once the prediction comes to pass. But make no mistake, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that we are already well inside the 1,260 days. Case closed. End of debate. No more discussion when the prediction comes to pass. All right, the center point of this amazing, truly amazing beyond words diagram that you are looking at of God's big picture of signs is this date here, the date of the Notre Dame fire, on the same day as the fire on the royal portico area of the Temple Mount, as I just explained. But this date also, April 15th, 2019, which was a prophetic date in the Hebrew calendar, by the way, which I think I mentioned, is the day that Michelle Obama was on a river cruise on the river in Paris, the Seine River, during the time of the Notre Dame Cathedral roof fire. In fact, her boat was redirected. Her river dinner cruise on the boat was redirected to an area that was not by the cathedral because of this. This happened exactly at the time that she was on the Paris River, and if you don't know, the Notre Dame Cathedral is right on the Paris River. In fact, I believe, if I recall, it's on a little island in the river. And what I mean is that the river flows by the cathedral on both sides of the cathedral. The river flows by both sides of the cathedral, if I recall correctly. Regardless, it was the same time that she was on the boat, and this is because this is a prophetic sign. that is ultimately pointing to and revealing the date that she will become the Dame, the Notre Dame of America, the Queen of America, which is what Notre Dame means. It's French for a reference to the Catholic Mary, which is blasphemy, and what makes Catholicism not a legitimate denomination of Christianity. But anyway, the cathedral is named Notre Dame after the supposed Queen of Heaven, Mary. But this is what God has used this as a prophetic sign to point to the coming day in which Michelle Obama will become the Queen. This massive judgment sign, as I explained, which was a sign of judgment warning for the church. And that's the reason for this connection right here because this sign includes the prophetic day that she was on the Paris River. She was in Paris because she was at a conference to promote her new book at the time, her book Becoming, because this is a prophetic sign that hints at the becoming of Michelle Obama, of the president. She will become the president exactly 239 weeks after she was touring for her book Becoming, and this extremely prophetic fire that not only was in the same city, but affected her. It affected her river cruise, as I just explained. So the reason for this prophetic significance of 239 is because this hints at 23 and 9. And God pairs the numbers 23 and 9 together to confirm the signs and connections. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And one simple way in which, if you think about it, he would provide second witnesses to confirm his signs is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9 and 23. And what I will do now is just play a couple of minutes of a clip that will explain how and why God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together to confirm the signs and connections. It's quite interesting, and then I'll be right back to explain the rest of this diagram. All right. Today, now I'm recording this. It is the 18th of November. Much more information, or rather understanding and knowledge regarding his signs has come to light since I originally recorded this video, which was before October 17th and also before November 13th. One thing too that has come to light as well is the release of the new song by the Beatles. And this is related to this video here because, as I'll explain in the amazing, very, very important Beatles prophecy video that I will post on this channel, it's all, well, a big part of this new song that's just been released by the Beatles is that it points back to the number one hit by the Beatles, the song named Michelle, which won a Grammy Award at the Grammys, the 9th annual Grammys. Well, and speaking of the number 9, as I just mentioned, as I'm about to play the clip, I'll play the clip, by the way, in a second. The clip explaining why God pairs 9 and 23 together. Well, anyway, it turns out if you read the history of the song Michelle, that a big part of the inspiration for the song was Paul McCartney's time in Paris, but specifically the left bank culture. It's this term or name for this bohemian 60s or culture on the left bank of the Seine River, which is right near the cathedral. The Notre Dame Cathedral is right near the left bank. I personally know this because in a few years ago, I was on the left bank handing out flyers, warning people about the end times, what's coming, and the predictions. I was also, for that matter, by the way, inside the Notre Dame Cathedral handing out flyers incognito, discreetly handing out flyers inside the cathedral itself. Well, anyway, so this is another tie that ties Michelle because of her trip down the Seine River next to the left bank in the boat, in the dinner river cruise, on the day and the exact time of the Notre Dame Cathedral fire. The song Michelle, as I'll explain in the Beatles prophecy video on this channel, is also a part of God's prophecies that are pointing to Michelle Obama. And again, it was inspired by the river that Michelle was on, okay, the left bank culture. All right, now another thing is that November 13th, like October 17th, these dates ended up being steps in the trail of signs. The October 17th signs revealed adding an additional 2 times 3 sets of 7 days. To reach the date, it is now predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on November 28th. All right, that'll be explained in the must-watch Gaza explosion video. That's amazing. So, in other words, all of the analysis here for the October 17th date is 100% correct. And if you don't believe me at this point, fair enough. But when the prediction comes to pass, it will prove that it is the case, that everything in this diagram here is 100% correct. It was a step in the trail of signs, and that's how God's big picture of signs works. It works on steps. It's a web. You don't have... Okay, so anyway. So what happened, though, here, which is very relevant to this particular video, is because of all of the analysis in this diagram leading to November 13th and this significance for Michelle Obama. This date here is 23 days before the date it is now predicted that she will become the 50th vice president on December 5th. And also 44 days to the date it is predicted that she will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. This will be after she becomes the president. And that date is predicted to be December 26th, when she will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. And that's 44 days from November 13th. So we have the 23 days and a 44 days connection. Well, just like God pairing 9 and 23 together in order to confirm his signs and connections, he also pairs 44 and 23 together. Because the 44th president is the basketball president who wore jersey 23 when he played basketball in high school, and will be returning to the White House in 2023. And that's just barely scratching the surface of the reasons for the significance of pairing 23 and 44 together. Well, that's the main reason anyway. And so anyway, the 23 and 44 also pair with the 9, because God pairs 9 with 23 and 9 with 44 as well. These 3 numbers pair with each other in different instances. And here in this diagram, you can see that there is a 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 9 days connection here, right? Which I'll explain. And the number 9 is the most important number in God's signs, as it is symbolism for God's judgment, as this symbolism comes from the Bible. And so on this day, also, the prophetic sign was the football game. And believe it or not, if you don't know, sports signs are very important in God's signs, and especially football and baseball. And anyway, this was the day of the Broncos sign. I don't want to really get into it too much. It's too long to explain everything, but there was the big aspect of the sign was the last play of the game, and that's typically how God works too. He uses firsts and lasts, including in prophetic sports games. And the last play was this highly, highly unusual ending. It was a wild ending, made major news. It was a nationally televised game too. It was a Monday night game. It was the only game on that day, which just gives it more confirmation that relevance that it was a nationally televised game. And anyway, the controversy was over there being 11 or 12 men on the field when there are only supposed to be 11. And that caused the play to be redone. And as a result, the Broncos won the game when they otherwise would have lost, had it not been for the penalty on their opposing team that had 12 men on the field instead of 11. That was the ending of the game. They won because of the penalty. Basically, the field goal was re-kicked. It was missed the first time, and then after the penalty, the kicker kicked it through the uprights to win the game, which is a very, very unusual ending to a game. And the reason for it is because God is pointing to this 11 and 12 symbolism, which is 9/11 symbolism. Okay, here's where we go off onto a little bit of a... okay, so 9/11 symbolism is the 11th hour going into the 12th hour symbolism. Because on 9/11, it was Flight 11 with a crew of 11 people that flew into the Twin Towers. It looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union. And Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which in ancient Israel referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness, and in English is an idiom that means last chance. Time is running out, as in last chance for the nation to repent and to turn back to God before judgment destruction. The reason for the Denver Broncos team is Denver is the highest city in America, and it's the high place, and that's what the word Bama means in Hebrew. Bama means high place. That's why Barack Obama had his Democrat National Convention acceptance speech in 2008 in Mile High Stadium in Denver. That's the symbolism in that, okay? And also the kick to the upright is through a high place. Furthermore, the uprights themselves are symbolism for 9/11 because they symbolize the two towers that were struck on 9/11. All right, now the reason why all of this is relevant in this context is because in God's signs, he uses turnovers, or I should say in his football signs, he has in the past used many examples of turnovers to symbolize the turning over of the presidency from one of the people we are talking about, Joe Biden, Michelle Obama, and Barack Obama. The turning over of these, and for that matter also Kamala Harris when she dies in a plane crash. The 49th vice president turning over to the 50th vice president, Michelle Obama, for example. So if you don't know football, a turnover is when the team accidentally turns the ball over to the opposing team, whether it be through what is called a fumble or an interception. Anyway, this particular game that had this wacky, wild ending and game-changing ending was also known for its turnovers. There were 4 turnovers that the Buffalo Bills made. And that's significant for other reasons that I can't explain here, but it simply provides a second witness, those other things that I'm alluding to, which makes this more relevant than just on its surface, but it is relevant enough because this game is occurring on the state which we expected a turnover sign, which is why Michelle Obama. It's a turning over of the presidency from Joe Biden to Barack Obama. And Michelle Obama is the step in the way. Along the way, she is the symbolic turnover here. And so this game was known for its turnovers. And then we had this turning of events at the end of the game, a dramatic surprise victory for the Broncos, just like Barack Obama will make a dramatic surprise victory when he returns to the White House through these turnovers. Kamala Harris dying in a plane crash and then Michelle Obama replacing her, etc. And so anyway, that's your prophetic sign on November 13th, and we just wanted to get that out of the way. Sorry to go off onto that before getting into this amazing video here and diagram. And so that explains the connection. It is valid, and as I just mentioned, this date is a step that confirms 23 and then 44 days to the date that Michelle Obama will become the 50th vice president and then appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. God uses the number 23 to reveal the identity of the Antichrist, the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school. In the Old Testament in the Bible, it is described how 2 goats were used on the Day of Atonement in the ritual on the Temple Mount. In Bible prophecy, there are two antichrists, and in Bible prophecy, it is said that the Antichrist will rule the Temple Mount during the end times period. And the Antichrist will be vanquished from the Temple Mount at the return of Lord Jesus Christ on the Day of Atonement in 2024. Goat is Antichrist symbolism. Goat stands for greatest of all time. And this is why the two GOATs of basketball wore jersey number 23, Michael Jordan and LeBron James. The GOAT of basketball, Michael Jordan, played for Chicago, and the GOAT Antichrist, the basketball president, is from Chicago. LeBron James is famous for being from Cleveland and having played for Cleveland and having won the NBA Finals championship for Cleveland, breaking the supposed Cleveland sports curse, which is Antichrist King symbolism, which is why LeBron James goes by the nickname King James. And this was used to point to the president Grover Cleveland, who was the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, skipping the 23rd presidency, just like the Antichrist will serve non-consecutive terms, having skipped the 45th presidency. In God's true big picture of end times signs, patterns, and connections, the number 9 is the most important number, as from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment, and the number 23 is the 9th prime number, and the number 45 is the 9th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 9th row is 45. This is why Michael Jordan, in the exact middle of his career, after having won 3 NBA titles and before winning his other 3 NBA titles, retired briefly, and when he returned, wore jersey number 45 for coincidentally 23 games. And it is why Michael Jordan, in his last game as a Chicago Bull, another city God uses to point to the Antichrist, who is also from Chicago, scored 45 points against the team from the 45th state. Like Michael Jordan, LeBron James also played in Cleveland, then famously left Cleveland in much controversy, and then returned again to play a second time in Cleveland in order to win the championship for Cleveland and break the Cleveland sports curse, which symbolizes the Antichrist curse of Barack Obama when he will return to the White House for his second presidency. In other words, the hiatus in the middle of Michael Jordan's career in Chicago and the hiatus in the middle of LeBron James's career in Cleveland hint at the hiatus of Barack Obama skipping the 45th presidency and returning to the White House for a second presidency. It will be his third term, which is why Michael Jordan won 3 championships and then briefly retired before returning a second time to win 3 more championships. God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together in order to confirm the signs and connections and to reveal the identity of the Antichrist, the basketball president that wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school and became president in 2009, and will become the president again in 2023. From the Bible, the numbers 9 and 23 both symbolize judgment, and the number 23 is the 9th prime number. The only grandfather-grandson presidents were the 9th and 23rd presidents, William and Benjamin Harrison. The 9th president, William Harrison, died on the calendar date April 4th, 44, which hints at the 44th president. Harrison died exactly 1 month after his inauguration. The name Harrison hints at Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash due to a bird strike and lightning and turbulence in St. Louis. And the Antichrist Barack Obama will rise to power and become president again through her replacement, which is what is hinted at with the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, President Grover Cleveland, who skipped the presidency of Benjamin Harrison. The 23rd president, which is why LeBron James, who played for Cleveland, wore jersey number 23. Michelle Obama will first replace Kamala Harris, and then Barack will replace Michelle. Michelle is the feminine version of Michael, which is the reason for the name Michael in the name Michael Jordan. In the Bible, the Hebrews crossed the Jordan River into the Promised Land. Barack Obama's famous autobiography is named A Promised Land. Obama the Antichrist will promise the world a new world order utopia. A goat is Antichrist symbolism. The greatest of all time, the GOAT of basketball, Michael Jordan, wore jersey number 23 and jersey number 9 when he played for the U.S. Olympic Dream Team, a team that beat their opponents by an average of 44 points per game, which hints at the 44th president, GOAT Antichrist, that wore jersey number 23 and became president in 2009. If you have not already watched the Michael Jordan prophecy video on this channel, the Michael Jordan prophecy video is an essential video for foundational understanding of how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. Besides revealing the identity of the Antichrist, God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 to reveal what the mark of the Antichrist is. Bible prophecy describes a mark of the Antichrist, which if one takes, they will go to hell, and if one doesn't take it, they won't be able to buy or sell, which means they won't be allowed to buy the rationed food that will be rationed due to the coming food shortages. Ezekiel chapter 9 is the chapter that describes the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist. In other words, the 9th chapter of the book of Ezekiel in the Bible is about the mark of the Antichrist, and the mark of the Antichrist involves changing one's chromosomes. And we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. God pairs 9 and 23 to identify what the mark of the Antichrist is. And speaking of the GOAT of basketball, LeBron James, who wears jersey number 23, he gave his name, LeBron James, to a Nike shoe that is named 23 chromosomes. The pattern on the shoe is unmistakably a pattern that resembles snakeskin, and that is because the mark of the Antichrist is a snake bite. The mark of the Antichrist changes chromosomes through inserting a protruding-shaped amino acid chain, and this protruding-shaped amino acid chain is synthesized snake poison. In the Bible, the biggest symbol of evil, of Satan, is the serpent. The reason why the shoe is made by Nike and why Michael Jordan is known for his Air Jordan shoe made by Nike is that Nike hints at the Nicolaitan doctrine that the vast majority of Christians have, especially evangelical Christians. This Nicolaitan doctrine of our day that Jesus said he hates in Revelation chapter 2, and that he is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. This explains why many quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist. It is judgment for their doctrine. That said, nowhere in the Bible does it say that one cannot repent after taking the mark of the Antichrist. And speaking of Michael Jordan, in the clip that I just played, the reason for the prophetic significance of the name Michael in Michael Jordan is that it hints at Michelle, and Barack Obama will become the president again through Michelle. This is the connection between Michael Jordan and Michelle Obama. Now, another confirmation, another second witness to this, is that the river Seine, the name in Simple English Gematria, which if you don't know what Gematria is, Hebrew, Roman, and Greek letters are also numbers, and as such we can convert names and words into numeric value. And if we do the same with Simple English Gematria, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, the name Seine equals 52. Now, 52 is a prophetic number because it is 2 times 26, first of all. 2 times 26 hints at 226, and the 226th word in Strong's Hebrew Old Testament concordance, which is the word that means prophetic sign. So this confirms that this is a prophetic sign, massive, because again, this massive prophetic Notre Dame fire was on the Seine River, because the cathedral is on the river, and she, Michelle Obama, was on the river, and the number for the river is 52. The number for the name of the river is 52. Another reason why 52 is prophetic and end times symbolism is that it is 42 plus 10. 42 is a number mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy that is symbolic of the period of the end times and the Antichrist. And Jesus wrote in the book of Revelation that the church, which is what this is, a church sign as I explained, will be tested, their faith will be tested for 10 days. And so 42 plus 10 equals 52. The number 239 is the 52nd prime number. And that is another witness confirmation for the prophetic relevance of this exact 239 weeks in between the Notre Dame fire when she was touring for her book Becoming to the day that she will become the Notre Dame, the Queen of America, the President, on November 13th. All right, regarding the prophetic signs that occurred on November 13th, 2023, this ended up being a step in the trail of signs leading to February 20th, 2024, the date that it is now predicted that Michelle Obama will become the 47th president. The signs that occurred on this date, well, it was a Monday night football game, and I won't go into the details in this video, but it involved turnovers and 9/11 symbolism. And the turnovers, if you don't know what a turnover is when one team unintentionally gives the possession of the ball to the other team. Anyway, long story short, it was about turnovers because it is symbolic of the turning over of the positions in the White House after Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. Michelle Obama will replace her, and then Joe Biden will step down, and she will replace Joe Biden, and then she will appoint Barack Obama, and Barack Obama will replace Michelle Obama. That's about a total of 4, and there were 4 prophetic turnovers in the game. Well, anyway, this date here connects with 99 days to February 20th. There is a lot more reasons for why it is known that February 20th will be the date that Joe Biden will step down and Michelle Obama will become the president. However, in context of this diagram, this 99 days pairs with this 9 plus 9 plus 9 days as confirmation to this date. So in other words, 9 plus 9 plus 9 days followed by 90 days. Also, it pairs with the 11 months because God pairs 9 and 11 together for 9/11 symbolism. And so that is another confirmation. And I also think that this too is a confirmation, a second witness for the relevance of a 99 days connection following November 13th. Because as explained in this video, this 239 weeks connection hints at a pairing of 23 and 9. And God pairs 9 with the number 23, and so the 99 days would also arguably fit into this as well. So anyway, that is that. Now, regarding the prediction for Harris's crash on October 17th, the following couple of minute clip explains what happened and how it is known from the prophetic signs that occurred on October 17th that the date that Kamala Harris will die, predicted to be, will be February 3rd, 2024. This video explains some of the amazing and important prophetic signs that the righteous Christian God of the Bible used to point to October 17th, 2023 regarding the prediction that U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Here is the email and forensic notes document that indicate that the prediction for Harris's plane crash on October 17, 2023 was known since July 6, 2023. In fact, it has been known since October of 2020 that Harris will die in a plane crash so that Barack Obama can become the president again. God pointed to October 17th, ahead of October 17th, and so it was believed that Harris's predicted plane crash would be on October 17th. As explained in the Gaza explosion video, the extremely profound prophetic signs that occurred on October 17th, 10:17, revealed adding 3 sets of 7 days to reach November 7th, 11:7. The signs on 11:7 in turn revealed a trail of signs that continued on through other dates, and this trail of signs is predicted to ultimately end on February 2nd or 3rd, 2024. This trail of signs that I am referring to is explained in the must-watch Gaza explosion video. That said, October 17th was the bigger date. October 17th was supremely important, and the signs on 10:17 pointed to Zechariah chapter 1, verse 17 in the Bible. The Gaza explosion video explains how the signs on 10:17 pointed to Zechariah 1:17. Zechariah 1:17 was also hinted at with the date 11:7, which again was a prophetic 3 sets of 7 days after 10:17. Furthermore, from 11:7, the trail of signs regarding Harris's predicted plane crash continued on to the date 1:7, and this too was another hint at Zechariah 1:17. The reason why God used October 17th, the date 10:17, to point to Zechariah 1:17 is that this important prophecy in Zechariah chapter 1 in the Bible is dated, and the date of this prophecy is recorded in Zechariah chapter 1 verse 7, 1:7, and the date 10:17 also hints at this. The prophet Zechariah recorded the precise date on which he received the prophecy from God. The date was the 24th day of the month of Shevat in the Hebrew calendar. This year in 2024, the 24th day of Shevat begins at sunset on February 2nd and goes to sunset February 3rd. In other words, God used many different profound trails of signs to lead to October 17th, 2023, in order to reveal the date on which Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, the 24th day of the month of Shevat, which is February 2nd or 3rd, 2024. View what has already been explained here in the video. This 42 in the Bible is in reference to 42 months, which is what 1,260 days is in prophetic Bible months, which is made up of years of 12 months of 30 days each. This 1,260 days, however, is also exactly 60 plus 60 plus 60 weeks, which hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. And so that is a second witness to the relevance of this 1,260 days Antichrist number here and connection between the win of the Royals in the World Series to the fire on the royal portico area of the Temple Mount on the same day as the Notre Dame fire that has a facade of the Notre Dame Cathedral, of the facade of kings, and the crown. She will be crowned the Queen of America. All right. And when I say that, it's also because she and her husband will be the last presidents. They will be the Antichrists, but they will be dictators. They will become kings and queens. Okay? Because that movement is already well underway. The blue team has already massively taken many steps in their coup, all right? So here we have this win of the Royals on this date. It is exactly this number of days to this, okay, as I explained. And again, this was their Royals' first win in 30 years, and they've only won 2 World Series. And they are 30 years apart, and in the Bible, 30 years is symbolic of a king, which connects to the facade of kings, as I said, and the royals, and the Antichrist king. But also, this 30 years is the 30 years in the movie Back to the Future, and the prophecy that Marty is trying to give Doc and warn Doc about. Well, sorry, he's in 1955 warning Doc about 1985, but part 2 is them, Marty and Doc, 30 years later in 2015. Okay, so this, in other words, it lines up with the prophecy in the Back to the Future movie. Furthermore, as I explained, the writers of Back to the Future made a baseball prophecy in the movie, and this is exactly what happened that aligned with their movie, the plot of their movie. Now, in part 2, I forget if I show a clip of it or not, but there's a scene in which the family is inside the home, Marty's family in the future. They are looking at a projected movie on the wall, and the towers appear to collapse. There's an image of 2 towers, and the technical glitch in the movie, in the projector, has it such that the towers are falling, but Marty's father is hanging upside down because the actor Crispin Glover didn't want to participate in the movie, so they hid him with a lookalike and made his character hang upside down in the movie, in the plot, so that you wouldn't recognize him, that it's not the original actor. But if we look at it from his perspective, the 2 towers that are falling are, if we're upside down, the 2 towers are collapsing. I should show a clip, but prior to the clip of that, there's a scene in which there are 2 tall pine trees, which hint at the 2 towers, but also in the original, there's the Twin Pines mall signage in front of the parking lot where the terrorists attack Doc. All right, so I should show a clip of that. I hope that it's in the clip that I just played for you. But this date was 4 times 4 weeks, and then 4 days after the release of the movie on the date July 3rd, and that hints at the 44th president, the Antichrist king, and 7-3 hints at a symbolic 3 sets of 7, which God uses frequently in his signs to communicate judgment warning, because the Israelites, when they crossed into the promised land and took Jericho, they enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7 around the walls of security of Jericho. And God was warning through the 9/11 events the collapse of America's walls of security, because the only building to survive the falling debris of the collapsed 110 stories was Trinity Chapel. And George Washington, after his first inauguration in Federal Hall on Wall Street, then marched around the walls of security of Jericho. He marched down Wall Street and into Trinity Chapel, where he consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its divine protection and blessings. And that's what God communicated. He pointed to Trinity Chapel, known today as the Miracle Chapel, because it survived without even a broken window. And he pointed to George Washington, who was born on the date 2/22, and that's why we have up here this date of this connection of 22 weeks and 2 days to the date it is predicted that President Trump will die, and President Trump is known for his tower on Wall Street. Furthermore, on the date of 9/11, he called into Channel 9 News, and during the phone call, he mentioned that his tower on 40 Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. Trump is known for his towers. The collapse of towers in the Bible is symbolic of God's judgment, and it's on Wall Street, which hints at the collapse of the walls of security. Furthermore, the 110 stories of the Twin Towers collapsed, which hinted at Joshua, who died at the age of 110, and he led the Israelites around the walls of security. And Washington was born on the date 222, February 22nd. And so that's why we have this connection, which I'll explain in a minute. All right, so that's why the symbolic 3 sets of 7 and the date of the movie Back to the Future, which does, in fact, the literal release date, in fact, does also connect into this trail of science, as we can see here. Now, as I mentioned, the purpose of the end times and the Antichrist is a test of faith, and this Royals win coincided with the release of the Walk movie, which was also produced and directed by Robert Zemeckis, the producer and director of Back to the Future. And this movie is about the Twin Towers. And so we have the prophecy about, 9/11 was a movie that God used as a prophecy to point to 9/11. And it just so happens that Robert Zemeckis then made a movie about the Twin Towers in 2015. And I explained that already. But this connection of 32 days is relevant because it hints at the 32nd prime number, which is 131, which hints at the 131st word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance, which is the word for blood disease. And the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing, and you know what I'm talking about, the thing that you can't talk about, is the mark of the Antichrist, and it causes this. Okay? The word here. I just said it. I'm not going to say it again, but it causes this. That's what the thing does. Right? That's why this connection right here. And again, the Antichrist is a test of faith, and that's why we have these Antichrist connections here from the release of The Walk. Now, The Walk is about the tightrope walk of Philip Petit. All right? Now, here is the big thing. Philip Petit's walk across a tightrope with his balancing pole with a man at the center is symbolic of the cross on which Jesus was crucified and paid the ransom to the ruler of this world for the price owed for our sin. But also, the name Petite is very relevant here because the thing that is the mark of the Antichrist that causes this, okay, what I just said, affects or changes one's chromosomes. And a chromosome is made up of 2 arms, a small arm and a large arm. And the small arm in scientific terminology is called the petite arm. And that's why Philip Petit. Yes, it's true. The 2 towers are in fact symbolic of the 2 arms of a chromosome. And this is why the Twin Towers were replaced with the One World Tower, symbolic of Genesis 11 and the Tower of Babel and transhumanism technology reaching the heavens without God, etc., symbolism. But the One World Tower, if you look at it closely and correctly, it definitely is symbolic of a thing that is used to put the thing inside people. That's why the Twin Towers, which are symbolic of the 2 arms of a chromosome, were replaced by a tower that resembles the thing. And that is confirmation that the name Petite hints at the small arm of a chromosome. All right, now, this is all 9/11 symbolism, as I have been explaining. And God uses the number 191 as symbolism for 9/11. This isn't the only instance of this being the case, and it is exactly 191 weeks after this Notre Dame fire and Michelle Obama on the Paris River to the date. Oh, before we go there, let's go back here. We can connect literally to 9/11. This date here, which has all of this Antichrist symbolism and connects with the royals, which hints at the Antichrist king, the facade of kings, the 1260 days, which is 60 plus 60 plus 60 weeks, which hints at 666. This date here is exactly 6,666 days, and I knew this ahead of time. By the way, I predicted that there would be a major prophetic event on this date ahead of time. And one reason I knew this is because of this 6,666 days connection to this extremely prophetic earthquake. the earthquake on January 13th, 2001, before 9/11, in the year of 9/11, this earthquake was in El Salvador, the country, and the nation of El Salvador just happens to have almost the exact same area. I don't know, square miles, whatever you want to call it. The land mass, the same land area, almost the exact same equivalent of the nation of Israel. And El Salvador is Spanish for the Savior. And the Savior came down and as a man in Israel, the Holy Land. So that's why El Salvador is the same geographical size as Israel. Well, there was this prophetic earthquake. And the reason why we know this is prophetic is because exactly 1 month later, we had another earthquake in El Salvador. Both earthquakes, the first one, I believe it was 944 or maybe 844, and the second one was 315 deaths. But the total amounted to 1,259 deaths. And that can't be an accident or a coincidence, because this number, as I explained earlier, is the number mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy regarding the period of the end times and the Antichrist, which, by the way, we are already well inside. The 1,260 days began on May 2nd and will end on the Day of Atonement in 2024 on October 12th. And the prediction being made in this video will prove this. The reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction, or these predictions, is to prove what I have just said. It is to prove the controversial things that I have just said, including what the mark of the Antichrist is. Make no mistake. Case closed, end of debate. No more discussion as to whether or not it is or isn't when the predictions come to pass. To not appreciate this is to miss entirely this prediction that is from God. And the purpose of this video and video channel, you might as well turn it off now and do something else with your time. The purpose of the prediction is to prove the controversial things that I am saying, which are proven through God's big picture of signs. And this will be proven to be God's true big picture of signs that is only being explained on this channel when the prediction comes to pass. And so it is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It does not need an additional something such as a technology or a form of false religious worship or some sort of supposed dispensation age after the age of grace or something to that effect. In fact, the reason why a majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is partly for judgment for this doctrine, this dispensationalism doctrine that says that the letters that Jesus wrote to the churches do not apply to them, for example, because it is a test of faith, okay? So, and the commonly held objections are explained in the must-watch snakebite video, but know that when the prediction comes to pass, your commonly held objections based on your knowledge of Bible prophecy are incorrect. That's the purpose of the prediction, to prove that, okay? It's also to prove that we are inside the 1,260 days and that the second coming is in October of 2024. Case closed. No more speculation about the beginning of Daniel's 70th week. It symbolically began in 2017. Case closed. Okay, so exactly 1 month later was this other earthquake. And again, the total was 1,259, but it's kind of peculiar because it's missing just one death. Well, the reason is because God is using this to hint at the one death of Kamala Harris and also actually President Trump. This is the symbolic missing death here. Because what God is communicating with this, in other words, is that this trail that I'm explaining is leading to the prophetic deaths, or one death, single deaths, okay? Because they'll die by themselves. Well, I mean, of course, there'll be other people with Kamala Harris on her plane, but you know, you get the point. Well, what is amazing is that this earthquake here, which ties it to 9/11, is exactly 70 plus 70 plus 70 days before 9/11. And that is amazing because, like I was saying, the Israelites marched around the walls of security of Jericho in a symbolic 7. They marched around once per day for 7 days. And then on the 7th day, they marched 7 times while 7 trumpets were blown. So it was a symbolic 3 sets of 7. And that's why God uses frequently 3 sets of 7 in his signs. And not only that, the walls of Jericho collapsed due to an earthquake. In my opinion, it's clear from the text. It's not specific. It's not precisely in the text, but one can infer it. But also, archaeology proves it. Archaeologists have proved that the walls of Jericho collapsed due to an earthquake. And so the 3 sets of 7 is earthquake symbolism in the book of Joshua. And we have this connection from an earthquake to 9/11, and the towers collapsing engendered a small earthquake that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall, where George Washington was inaugurated before he walked down Wall Street into Trinity Chapel and consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its divine protection and blessings, which it has done exponentially since 9/11, and that's why America is about to be destroyed and its walls of security are about to collapse. Okay, so we have this connection to 9/11, but not only that, on 9/11, we have Joshua symbolism. It was 110 stories that collapsed, and Joshua was 110, and he led the Israelites around the walls before they collapsed. And they blew trumpets before they collapsed, and Trump on 9/11 called into Channel 9 News and mentioned his tower on Wall Street, as I mentioned. But also, on 9/11, there were 343 firefighters that died, and 343 is 7 times 7 times 7. Incidentally, the number of firefighters that have died from 9/11 related illnesses, in other words, toxicity from 9/11, reached 343 on the Day of Atonement in 2023, just a few days ago. And that date is in turn connecting to the date it is predicted that a dirty bomb or suitcase nuke will explode in Manhattan on December 2nd. But that is explained in another video. But also on 9/11, the second plane had 56 passengers. And 56 is 7 plus 7 times 7, which is a symbolic 3 sets of 7. But not only that, it is actually more related to the 3 sets of 7 in Joshua, because it was 7 days they marched once per day, and then on the 7th day it was a 7 times 7. They marched 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. And also in the Omer count, it is a symbolic 7 days from Passover to the Feast of First Fruits, and then 7 times 7 days to the Feast of Pentecost. Okay, so by the way, there's also 3 sets of 7 in the account of judgment in the flood account in the book of Genesis. So that's also judgment symbolism there too, with 3 sets of 7. All right, so we have this. Now we've established that this is actually, in fact, connecting to 9/11. And I could easily connect 9/11 to all of this too, in the big picture of science, right? Because it connects with 666 days to the launch of the Opportunity probe, and on, which was 7 years exactly to LeBron James's decision, and on, okay? So, but I won't go there. I've explained it in other videos. So the point is, let's get back to here now, because this 119 weeks, again, as I mentioned, is symbolic of 9/11. And this gets us to the day of the prophetic signs on this date, and there were quite a few of them, and they will be explained in another video. But just briefly, this was the day that the GOAT, greatest of all time, of college football coaching, the coach known for his innovative, revolutionary air raid style of coaching, which hints at the air raid, the hit of Michelle Obama's plane by a bird. Okay, and so this coach, let's see. Well, anyway, I'll come back to that. But this was also the day of the Red Hook fire. This was in New York City, an area called Red Hook. I think it's on one of the smaller islands. I could be wrong about that. Maybe not. But the New York Police Department warehouse for holding evidence caught fire, and the New York Fire Department was there to put the fire out from fire boats and from land. And so we have involved here in this prophetic sign, which is a fire, the New York Fire Department and the New York Police Department, which in itself is 9/11 symbolism, the two departments together there, just like on 9/11. But this fire connects with this fire. Well, two fires, because there was the Royal Portico fire as well as the Notre Dame roof fire. But there were 4 plus 4 people injured, which hints at 44, the 44th president. This pairs with the coach who was named the Coach of the Year nationally twice and Coach of the Year for his conference 3 times, which hints at 23. And God pairs 44 and 23 together to confirm the signs and connections. And I don't think I've mentioned yet, but this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required, and that is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic science. And one simple way in which he would provide second witnesses for us, if you think about it, is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44. The reason being, the 44th president, the basketball president, wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school and will become the president again in 2023. Also, he will skip the 45th presidency and, anyway, actually I already explained it. So I won't explain it anymore. Okay. All right. So this date here is exactly 44 weeks because that pairs with the 23 and the 4 plus 4 injured. 2, the day that it is predicted that Kamala Harris's plane will crash in a fiery crash, hence the fire here, and hinting at 9/11 and planes that exploded in fiery crashes. All right. Also, her flight will be a flight path that will be the same as Flight 77 on 9/11, so that's more 9/11 symbolism. Flight 77 hints at 11 times 7, which is what this date hints at. 1017, it hints at 117. And 11 times 7, and Flight 77. Her flight from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles will be the same flight path as Flight 77 on 9/11. As a result of her crash, the 44th president will become the president again, and that's why this 44 weeks connection. And her plane crash will be 9 plus 9 plus 9 days, and number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections as from the Bible, which is only being explained on this channel. As from the Bible, it symbolizes God's judgment, and God frequently repeats a number 3 times for some emphasis of its symbolic meaning, and God pairs 9 and 44 because the 44th president became president in 2009. One reason being for that pairing of 9 and 44. And so that's why the death of Kamala Harris and then her Michelle Obama becoming the president will lead to the 44th president becoming the president again. All right, from this red hook fire, which is 9/11 symbolism, as I explained, and it connects with 191 weeks. Furthermore, it is 119% of a year to the date it is predicted that there will be a catastrophic solar storm coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth and knock out the nation's power grid, which will trigger the eruption of Yellowstone and also will bring about food rationing, which will be used to enforce the mark of the Antichrist through digital programmable currency that will restrict those that haven't taken the mark of the Antichrist from being able to buy and sell food. Okay? So 119% of a year is this connection right here. The reason why that's prophetic, there's more to the signs on this date, which I can't explain here. But there's another sign that's most important for confirming this. But see, that's the difficulty with explaining God's big picture web of signs, is that when you try to explain one part of the web, you end up pulling the entire web. And to explain the other sign would require another hour. And so I can't. But we just have to take my word for it. But also, this red hook is symbolic of a punch, and it is symbolizing the punch of space weather from the sun on Earth, believe it or not. And the red hook, the symbolic of the sun, fire. All right. It's also what's described in Revelation chapter 8, which is why it is 8 injured. And the other sign was the Washington, D.C. hockey team player scoring 800 goals. Reaching 800 goals. But there's more to that. And I'm pretty sure his jersey number is number 8. Yeah, it is. But there's more to it. But anyway, the event of the sun and the fire on earth is described in Revelation chapter 8. Okay? So that's why the 8 injured in the red hook fire on this extremely prophetic date here. Now, this is 11 months, and there's more pairing than just this, which is explained in other videos, but it does pair with the 9 plus 9 plus 9 days here to give us a 9/11 pairing to confirm that Michelle Obama will become the president on this day. Okay? All right, so I've explained this area of this diagram. Let's go up to the top here and finish this diagram. Okay, there's lots to be said here. Now, although it's in small print, this is huge. It's exactly 216 weeks, which is 6 times 6 times 6 weeks. And the Antichrist was born on the 216th day of the calendar year, August 4th, Barack Obama. And this was the day of the prophetic plane crash, okay, over Washington, D.C., which hints at the Antichrist who will rule from Washington, D.C. What happened here? There was a plane that departed from the 16th state. God uses 16 to hint at 4 times 4 and the 44th president. And it reached the 11th state, its destination, before it mysteriously turned around and then headed south over Washington, D.C., which triggered the F-16s to emergency respond to this plane, which triggered a sonic boom, which made the prophetic sign, the sonic boom over Washington, D.C. And the F-16 also hints at 4 times 4 and the 44th president. And we're talking about the 44th president in Washington, D.C. Now, the plane was owned by a company named Encore, which means second time in French. And whoa, I just realized this. This connects to the sign in France with Michelle Obama in France. Wow. The name of the plane is Encore, which is a French word, which means a second time. It means again, is what it means. But the word has been incorporated into the English language to mean a second time. Okay, and more than that, in English, although it's a French word, it's used, in a performance. In other words, like a standing ovation when people will request that the performer perform one last bit, which is exactly what will happen with the Antichrist. And the enthusiasm for people to have him do an encore presidency, one last little bit. And not only that, he'll be saying, of course, that he's only going to be president until the 2024 election, which is, of course, will be a lie. Not only will it be a lie because the second coming will be in 2024 before the election, but he'll know it as a lie at the time. He has no ambitions to ever leave the White House. He is America's dictator. And even before he was elected in 2008, I knew he would be the last president. I was really, really surprised when Trump became the president because I knew spiritually, instinctively, Holy Spirit, that this man was the last president. I knew it. But I was right all along. He will be the president again and the last president. But anyway, that's what encore means. And but I didn't realize it connects with the French sign here. That's just amazing. Now, the plane ended up crashing into Virginia. And now the story, the media covered how the plane was owned by donors, or rather, I think, the passengers on the plane that died were contributors, funders of Trump's campaign. The blue team, the haters of conservatives and Republicans, they made a big deal about that, and so that's why this connects to the death of Trump, with 22 weeks and 2 days, because Trump is a symbolic Washington for a number of reasons, including his tower on Wall Street, as I explained earlier. So, and Washington was born on the date 222. Furthermore, Trump's prophetic Oval Office speech on CVD Disease Day, March 11th, 2020, when the World Health Organization officially declared that the CVD was a pandemic, his speech ended at precisely 9:11 p.m. on the clock on the live TV news screen, and it was exactly 222 months after 9/11. And that was one reason why I knew before March 11th, 2020, over a year before, long before CVD, that something very big and bad would occur on that date, and it would be world-changing because of this 222 months connection, because of George Washington, who was born on the date 222. But anyway, so that's the reason why this is a confirmation that President Trump will die on November 7th. This plane crash that the media hyped up or kept reporting about how the people on board donated to Trump. Could you imagine them doing that? The people on board were campaign contributors to Biden or any other blue team candidate, right? No. Anyway, that's because they have the spirit of Antichrist, and God designed Trump to stir up the hornet's nest and trigger their irrational hatred of conservatives and, I should say, true conservatives and true Christians. Now, this day also was the day that Michael J. Fox was in the news for stumbling on stage and falling onto the couch at a fan expo. He was on stage at a fan expo for Back to the Future, and he fell, and this connects to the Back to the Future prophecy I'm talking about right here. This is amazing. Words can't describe how amazing this is, how this connects with exactly 216 weeks, which connects back to the Back to the Future prophecy through the baseball prophecy, etc., and the movie The Walk, etc., right? Fox hints at 666 because F is the sixth letter, O is the 15th letter, which hints at 1 plus 5 equals 6, and X is the 24th letter, which hints at 2 plus 4 equals 6. That's why Fox. That's why Michael J. Fox. It's a 666 sign. This was on the day of the sonic boom and the plane crash over Washington, D.C., which is how the Antichrist will become the president again, through a plane crash, and the president in Washington, D.C. So this is just amazing. But this is also 23 days. The Antichrist is the basketball president who wore 23 and will become the president again in 2023. And we're talking about Michael J. Fox's movie, Back to the Future. And he was at the expo for that movie. But this was 23 days after the release of his new movie, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a documentary about him and his condition, right? But it's his movie. It's a movie about him. And it's 23 days, which is prophetic. All right. Now, but in any case, all right, what is also amazing that I just realized is that the name Michael, or rather Michelle, is the feminine version of Michael. Michelle is Michelle Obama, which is why the name Michael Jordan, or rather her name is Michelle because of Michael Jordan, and Barack Obama wore jersey number 23, just like Michael Jordan. They're both from Chicago, and Jordan is the GOAT, greatest of all time, which hints at GOAT Antichrist. Well, anyway, Michelle Obama is the feminine version of Michael, and we have this amazing connection of this exact 6 times 6 weeks to Fox, which is 666, and Michael. And from this Michelle Obama sign, it connects exactly to the date that it is predicted that she will become the president. Michelle Obama. So that's the reason for this connection to Michael J. Fox. It's amazing. We also have on this day the death of the matriarch of the NFL. Now, what I'm going to do here is just read a paragraph that I already wrote to some friends regarding the prophetic significance of the death of Norma Hunt, the widow of the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. There's a lot of information. It's just a paragraph. It'll be amazing. But she's the matriarch, which hints at, of course, the Queen or President Obama, Michelle Obama, right? Which is what this is connecting to as I'm explaining here, right? Because it connects with 6 + 6 days to the Titanic crash sign. And the sign was the date that it was discovered. The story is about it's the desperate search for the wreckage, and the wreckage was discovered on this date. Furthermore, the other prophetic signs on this date, which I made a 7-hour video about. Why do I say that? That's how important this sign is. That's how much information there is about the sign. It's about so many other things, though. It's not even really all about the Titanic sub. It's about 50 videos in one video. What I'm trying to tell you is that you need to watch that video. It's 50 videos worth of information in one video. 50 different video stories, prophetic things like this. This is one video. There's 50 of them like that in this video, okay? This is so important. But anyway, this is a symbolic crash, and it's connecting to the plane crash here. And Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash on the date 10/17, which, as I explained in another video, hints at the number 117, which is why it'll be 117 days. Now, to explain the number 117, it's extremely important, but I'm not going to explain it here. What you need to do is stop this video here and watch the other video. It's titled, Harris's plane crash will crash on October 17th, 10/17 equals Great American Eclipse peaks at 1:17 p.m. It peaked at 1:17 p.m. over St. Louis, which is why her plane crash will crash on the date 10/17 in St. Louis. It entered the U.S. on the West Coast at 10:17 a.m. and on and on. So you make sure you watch that other video. I would stop this and come back and watch the rest of this after you've watched it so that you don't forget. But anyway, so that's why we have the matriarch connecting to the death of Kamala Harris, which in turn again connects with 9 + 9 + 9 days to the date it is predicted that Michelle Obama will become the matriarch of the nation, right? That's why the matriarch of the NFL. So I'm just going to pause now and take a couple minutes to just explain Norma Hunt, the matriarch of the NFL. On this day, the matriarch of football, quote unquote, died. She was the widow of Kansas City Chiefs founder and owner. God uses records. She was the only woman to have attended every Super Bowl. She attended Super Bowl 57, the most recent Super Bowl, in which her Chiefs won. This is because Super Bowl 57 was symbolic of the dragon and the woman in Revelation chapter 12. So the signs that I explained in another video, I don't know, I haven't made the video yet, but anyway, this Super Bowl was all about the woman in Revelation chapter 12, which is why the halftime show was the singer dressed in the red dragon, and the woman in Revelation chapter 12. 57 hints at 5 + 7 = 12. And she was pregnant. If you recall, the big story about that Super Bowl was in fact the halftime show, and how the singer, what's her name, came out, surprised everyone on stage by being pregnant, completely dressed in bright red from head to toe, symbolic of the red. And she descended. She came into the show descending on a platform to the ground. And in Revelation chapter 12, the dragon is thrown down from heaven to earth. It was a massive Revelation chapter 12 sign, which is what's hinted at. So anyway, it was about the woman, and she's Mrs. Chiefs, if you will. And her Chiefs won in the most recent Super Bowl before she died. And she was the only woman to have attended every Super Bowl. This is why she was the only woman to have attended every Super Bowl, because it hints at the woman in Revelation chapter 12. She played a role in naming the event the Super Bowl, due to her buying a Super Bowl for her kid. So she's responsible for the name Super Bowl, which is more confirmation. Therefore, her connection to Super Bowl is solid. This is more confirmation how she's connected to Super Bowl. She's the only woman. Okay, and so woman in the last Super Bowl she was in which her Chiefs won, was all about the woman in Revelation chapter 12. So that's like the solid. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a day count connection between the Super Bowl and her death. Let me just check. All right, stunning. I was correct. From the Super Bowl, which was about the woman Revelation chapter 12, to her death, the only woman that had been to every Super Bowl, including the last one in which her Chiefs was in it, is exactly 4 times 4 weeks. And in other words, 16 weeks. And the day that she died was the day that the plane crashed, like I just explained, that triggered the F-16 and the sonic boom over Washington, D.C. The plane that crashed was departed from the 16th state, all 4 times 4 symbolism to hint at the 44th president in Washington, D.C., through a woman, the death of Kamala Harris, and then Michelle Obama. And so this is stunning. This is stunning. All right, now back to the diagram, because I just learned this. So this is more confirmation of the 23 days connection, for example, because God pairs 23 and 44. Okay, so I forgot to mention that too, by the way. This 23 days pairs with the 16th state and the F-16 because it's 4 times 4. But Norma Hunt is also 4 times 4. So there's a 4 times 4 weeks exact connection because of her connection to the Super Bowls and then the woman in the last Super Bowl, which was the Revelation 12 sign. Now, a little bit more about that. Not only did she descend in her red outfit, what's her name again? Okay. Anyway, but so that was symbolic of the dragon being thrown down from heaven to earth. But in the description of that in Revelation chapter 12, the dragon is not only thrown down from heaven to earth, it is thrown down with its angels. And the performer, the singer, all dressed in red, pregnant, which hints at the pregnant woman in Revelation chapter 12, descended with all of her dancers as well, quite a number of them, which was symbolic of the dragon descending with the dragon's angels. But not only that, though, she's a star, she's a music star, and in the Revelation chapter 12, there's mentions of stars. The Revelation 12 sign, for example, is a star sign, which is the beginning of Revelation chapter 12. But also, in the beginning of that description, the dragon sweeps with his tail 1/3 of the stars down to earth, which is then symbolic of the angels falling with the dragon to earth. But the point is that there are stars. Her dancers were dressed in bright white, like plain white, right? Which is symbolic of stars. They were white, completely white. She was all in red and her dancers were completely white. So that was star symbolism. It's so clear that it was a Revelation chapter 12 sign that you have to wonder, whoever designed it, did they even know it? But of course they didn't. But Satan knew, right? Or God knew. God designed this. It's a prophetic sign from God, right? It's not, I take that back. It's not from Satan. This sign is from God. Many Christians are very confused about that, and they are focused on watching for the signs of Satan, but it's nonsense. These are signs from God. Okay. So anyway, so let's get back to that paragraph I was talking about. All right, so she's responsible for naming the Super Bowl even, okay? Therefore, her connection to Super Bowls is solid. Her Chiefs won the Super Bowl after not having been in the Super Bowl for literally 50 years, which is why the Chiefs beat the 49ers in that Super Bowl. We're talking about Super Bowl 54 now. It hinted at 49 days and then the 50 days from the Omer count to Pentecost. Okay, so the Omer count is 49 days and 50 days from the Feast of First Fruits. As explained many times, the Chiefs are symbolism for Pentecost. Okay, so I'll just explain it, just some of it. The Chiefs, their colors are symbolic of, they're yellow and red, which is symbolic of fire, which symbolizes Pentecost, which symbolizes the church. Prior to that Super Bowl, the Chiefs quarterback auctioned off his firefighter helmet for charity, and one of the main stories on the day of the Super Bowl is how a Chiefs fan accidentally caught himself on fire. the halftime show was said that the performers, the two singers, were on fire, and also the story of the game was how it was said that the quarterback caught fire at the end of the game. All right, that's just scratching the surface of how the Chiefs were symbolic of Pentecost. At the same time, though, the Chiefs are also symbolic of the two antichrists described in Bible prophecy. And that Super Bowl was all about the big play of the game, which was a pass from the Chiefs' 22-yard line to the opposing team's 22-yard line, the 49ers' 22-yard line. That was the game-changing big play of the game, okay? It was called the Sting play, and that's because it hints at the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist. The thing, right? You know what I'm talking about. The stinger, right? And which is the test of faith for Christians, which is symbolized by Pentecost and the Kansas City Chiefs. But this win for the Chiefs was also known for it being the 222nd win for the coach. This coach had been in the NFL forever without having won a Super Bowl and having won lots of games, finally winning the Super Bowl on his 222nd win. And all of this is because the number 222 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist, described in the book of Ezekiel, would have been a Tav mark, and the Tav letter is the last letter and the 22nd letter in the Hebrew alphabet. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, which is the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. And this is why the mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by the number 22. All right? Now, also, if you want to see it, because I mentioned it earlier, I'll just mention it. The two towers are symbolic of the chromosomes, and that's also symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Okay? All right, now, and they were hit by two planes, for that matter, too. All right, now, it was Super Bowl 54. Now, this wasn't known, the significance of this wasn't known until this year, because Super Bowl 54 was 2020. But that hints at slavery and freedom, because it hints at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, which is what the mark of the Antichrist and the Antichrist are all about. It's about this theme of slavery and freedom. The Antichrist system will enslave people and is enslaving people, and which is the theme of the Bible, slavery and freedom. And the Civil War was about slavery and freedom, and the 54th Massachusetts Regiment was the first black regiment. And they are known for not being paid the equivalent amount that the white Northern soldiers were paid, official policy from Washington, D.C., which was an example of oppressive minority laws, which is what the mark of the Antichrist is, taking it or not taking it, the treatment of those, making them second class or lesser citizens or not even citizens, as Emmanuel Macron said. Emmanuel Macron said, as in Mark Macron. Macron means Mark. What it means Mark, it's referring to a mark in Latin, I think. Anyway, he said that the French people that didn't take the mark of the Antichrist, the thing, were not citizens. That's right. Because this is all leading to genocide. The spirit of Antichrist will lead what is happening to genocide. That's what is happening. But it's all this theme of slavery and freedom. Anyway, they weren't paid the equivalent $13 that the white Northern soldiers were paid, which hints at the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. But the mark of the Antichrist will be enforced through currency, digital programmable currency, as I explained. Okay, so that's why Super Bowl 54 is all about this very massive, big sign that communicates judgment for the church, symbolized by the Chiefs and the mark of the Antichrist. Okay, and furthermore, it occurred, this Super Bowl in 2020 occurred at the beginning of the CVD disease. Okay, and it was the date 2/2, February 2nd, forgot. The news of her death broke, the news of Norma Hunt broke with a statement on the Chiefs' website. The Chiefs are the only football team in Missouri, the 24th state. This is why she died on the date 6/4, which hints at 6 times 4 equals 24. She died on the day of the plane crash that crashed after flying over the Capitol, which pointed to Kamala Harris's plane crash, which will be in the 24th state. That's right. Her plane will crash in St. Louis, which is why Norma Hunt died, being connected to the 24th state. Harris's crash location will be symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, as I have explained many times, so I won't explain it again. This is so the two paths of the eclipses will cross over each other, which will engender an X, which is what the Tav mark is. And the middle date is the date of the two eclipses, the one in 2024 and the one in 2017. They'll cross each other exactly where the first one peaked. The middle date, December 14th, 2020, was the date of the first administration of the mark of the Antichrist. And an X is all about the midpoint, and the X is also symbolic of the chromosomes, which form an X, which are changed by the mark of the Antichrist. Harris's location, okay, so let's see. The reason for this connection to Super Bowl 54 is through the death of Norma Hunt. 54 equals $13 pay, a mark of the Antichrist laws, symbolism. Norma Hunt seems to hint at Nimrod Hunter, which is in the Bible a prototype or a type for the Antichrist. So Norma Hunt hints at Nimrod Hunter, because Nimrod is a hunter in the Bible, okay? In the news stories, the headlines are Chiefs quarterback Mahomes' comments regarding Norma Hunt. He said she was the best, which seems to be further evidence of Antichrist symbolism and confirmation for Nimrod Hunter. Nimrod Hunt died at 85 years old, and Mahomes is number 15, which adds up to 100. Their Chiefs won their first Super Bowl in 50 years. By the way, 50 years is also very prophetic in the Bible and was confirmation of the... as I already explained it. The Chiefs won their first Super Bowl in 50 years in the 100th anniversary season of the NFL, which we can now see the prophetic purpose of the 100th season of the NFL. Because Norma Hunt and Mahomes, the star, add up to 100. All right, but this is the prophetic. So that's not so solid. It's kind of speculation. But anyway, what isn't speculation is that the reason why Mahomes is number 15 is because the 15th triangular number is 120. In a triangle of numbers, last number in the 15th row is 120, and 120 is symbolic of Pentecost. And as I explained, the Chiefs were symbolic of Pentecost, because 120 disciples were waiting in the upper room when the tongues of fire came down on Pentecost that began the church age. Okay, when it was only known of the plane that crashed after flying over the Capitol in terms of 6/4 signs. Okay. What I'm saying here, I've written it poorly, is that the day of the plane crash, and the day of the plane crash was exactly 7 + 7 years after Barack Obama went down to Egypt. The 31st chapter of the book of Isaiah begins with "Woe to those who go down to Egypt," and ends with a description of the Antichrist's defeat at the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ. And so Egypt, because Pharaoh had a dream that was interpreted by Joseph regarding 2 sets of 7 cows, which Pharaoh told the king of Egypt that were symbolism of 7 years of prosperity followed by 7 years of famine. And the 7 years of famine in Bible prophecy are symbolic of the 7 years of the end times, which began in 2017, symbolically. And so that's the reason here we have a 7 + 7 years connection from this Egypt sign when Barack Obama went down to Egypt. Again, woe to those who go down to Egypt. And Barack Obama, one of the first things he did after becoming president in 2009 on June 4th, was he went down to Egypt to deliver his famous Cairo, Egypt speech in order to tell the Muslim world that America is no longer a Christian nation. because he's the Antichrist. And so that's the connection here, okay? And so, well, anyway, Kamala Harris's plane will go down near Little Egypt. That's the thing. The eclipse and her location in St. Louis peaked near the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt. In fact, the eclipse peaked over Cairo, Egypt, and the second eclipse will also go over Cairo, Egypt. And actually, Barack Obama went to, Cairo, Illinois. And Barack Obama went down to Cairo, Illinois as a U.S. senator to deliver a speech, just like he went to Cairo, Egypt to deliver a speech. The connection between 6/4/23, again, the plane crash, Michael J. Fox's fall, and Norma Hunt's death, and the date of Harris's predicted crash, 81 days. Well, I'll explain that in a minute. That gets us to, 81 days gets us to August 24th, a date I briefly thought would be the day, but then realized soon after that it would be a important step in the trail of signs leading to her death. And sure enough, I was correct, because August 24th, this date, 81 days later, August 24th, if I said April, I apologize. I meant August 24th, was the day of the plane crash of General Wagner. And I knew ahead of time that August 24th would be 54 days before the predicted date that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on October 17th. And when it was learned that the date ended up being for the purpose of Wagner's plane crash, my jaw dropped, if you sort of speak, right? Because I had already known that somehow this General Wagner was for the purpose of a major prophetic sign. Because the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, were known for their valiant battle at Fort Wagner. I mean, that's what the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is most known for. Their heroic battle at Fort Wagner in North Carolina. Or was it South Carolina? Yeah, South Carolina. And so the 54th, that's why the 54 days from the death of Wagner, the general, the Russian you know what I'm talking about, right? The Russian General Wagner, he died in a plane crash, 54 days. And Wagner is tied to the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. Okay, but also on August 24th, 2023 was the day that in 5 months, Trump had been arrested 4 times. And this one was in the 4th state, which was another hint at 54. Okay? So, from this plane crash on June 4th to her predicted crash on October 17th, we have this 81 days and then 54 days connection. Okay? Now, why the 81 days? Well, 81 is 9/11 symbolism. 9 divided by 11 is 0.818181. And there were 81 passengers on Flight 11. Okay, there was a crew of 11 people and 81 passengers. 8 plus 1 equals 9. So the Flight 11 had a crew of 11, but passengers that equated to 9. Anyway, 81 is also 9 times 9. And 9 pairs with 23 to confirm the signs and connections. And again, this was 23 days after the release of Michael J. Fox's new movie. And Fox tumbled and fell onto a couch after he was introduced at a Back to the Future panel at a fan expo. And again, Back to the Future was a prophecy from God predicting or warning about 9/11. And 81 is about 9/11. Okay. The plot of the movie Back to the Future is about a prophecy from Marty to Doc. God used the movie Back to the Future as a prophecy to predict 9/11. It is one of the most profound prophetic signs. I have explained this in this video I've explained this in videos and I will explain it again. This sign in which Michael J. Fox fell is a profound sign that points to the collapse of the Twin Towers on 9/11. It is confirmation for the 81 days connection from the day he fell to the predicted date of Harris's crash, which again connects with 54 days to her crash, as I just explained. Another reason why Norma Hunt died at the age of 85 is because she died on the day that Fox fell at the Back to the Future panel. Back to the Future was released in 1985. The release date on July 3rd in 1985 hints at 3 sets of 7 and the collapse of 110 stories on 9/11. Okay, the date of the release of the movie Back to the Future on July 3rd, 1985 is 13,850 days to Fox's fall on June 4th, 2023. This is amazing. 850 hints at 85 and 13,000 hints at 13. 8 plus 5 equals 13. Fox equals 666, as I explained. 13 in the Bible is Antichrist symbolism. Nimrod was the 13th generation from Ham. Haman, another type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 2 13th days of the month, and the two Antichrists are described in the book of Revelation in chapter 13. Okay, and so we're talking about Nimrod and his association with Norma Hunt, but Nimrod founded Babel, where the Tower of Babel was built. The collapse of the World Trade Center towers that looked like a giant 11 fell after Flight 11 hit them in the 11th state in New York City, which is made of 11 letters, which hints at Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel story. 85 equals 8 plus 5 equals 13. Norma Hunt at 85 is hinting at Nimrod Hunter, the 13th generation from Noah. The Dow in the Bible, the Dow number on 9/11 was 9,605. 6 plus 5 hints at 11. 0.51, which was 0.34 points. Okay, so the previous close was 9,600.05. 85. So another 85 in 9/11. There was an 85 number in 9/11 is what I'm saying here. Okay, and let's see. The 0.85 in the Dow in the 9/11 numbers points to 1985, the year that God warned of 9/11 through the movie Back to the Future. This is all stunning. Fox's fall at the Back to the Future panel connects to the release of Back to the Future. That's amazing. Back to the Future is a movie, and the release of Fox's new movie was 23 days before he fell at the Back to the Future panel, which is 9 times 9 days before it is predicted that Harris will fall from the sky in a plane crash, which will lead to the rise of the Antichrist, which is why the gematria of Fox is 666. Her flight path will mirror Flight 77 on 9/11, and 9 times 9 days is 81 days, and there were 81 passengers on Flight 11 on 9/11, and God used the movie Back to the Future as a prophecy to predict 9/11. There is no one else that I'm aware of that is saying that it was God that used Back to the Future to predict 9/11. Instead of what others say, that Satan and Luciferian conspiracy of some sort, that a Luciferian conspiracy of some sort or other, or some sort of supposed collective consciousness pseudo-scientific explanation. So there are a lot of people that are aware of this uncanny parallel between the movie Back to the Future and 9/11. If they are Christian, they're typically saying that Satan or a Luciferian conspiracy is behind this parallel. And if they are not a Christian, then they are giving some sort of New Age type of explanation, collective consciousness, pseudo-scientific explanation of some sort. In other words, Robert Zemeckis tapped into the universal consciousness of in some way, etc. But it's all, both are malarkey. Both are complete nonsense. The truth is, and as far as I'm aware, I'm the only one that's saying this, is that God used the movie Back to the Future as a prophecy to warn America about 9/11. And this will be proven through the prophecy that I'm using to predict the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, which will then prove what I have just said, which is that it was God that designed this parallel between the movie Back to the Future and 9/11. That's the purpose of this prediction in this video that I'm making, this prediction that is from God for Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash and Michelle Obama becoming the president on November 13th, 2023. All right, there's really one last connection here that I can see that we haven't discussed yet, and that is from the day that Trump, in 5 months, was arrested 4 times, this one being in the 4th state, and the day of the Wagoner plane crash, which is again confirmation for this 54 days connection because of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment and Fort Wagoner. But from this day also, we have this exact 600 plus 600 plus 600 hours, which is, I believe, 75 days, to the date it is predicted that President Trump will die from a heart attack. All right? Which is an Antichrist number here. I mentioned 14. Trump will die 14 days before it is predicted that Barack Obama will become the president. And but anyway, I'll leave it at that. Okay, so I believe we have explained this diagram here, this truly profound diagram. It is said in the Bible that the number 666 is associated with the Antichrist. And it is said that during the period of the Antichrist, he will rule the Temple Mount, exactly 6,666 days before the fire on the royal portico area of the Temple Mount and the Notre Dame Cathedral roof fire was the day of a major earthquake in El Salvador that killed almost 1,000 people. The name El Salvador is Spanish for the Savior. The territorial size of El Salvador just happens to be almost exactly the same size as the territory of the nation of Israel. In this earthquake, 944 people died. This earthquake occurred on January 13th, 2001, and exactly 1 month later, on February 13th, 2001, another earthquake struck El Salvador and killed 315 people. 944 deaths and then 315 deaths is a total of 1,259 deaths. 1,259 deaths is 1 death short of 1,260 deaths, which again is the number that occurs 7 times in Bible prophecy regarding the period of time of the Antichrist king's rule. This exact 1 month separation between these 2 earthquakes that killed a total of 1,259 people hints at 1 more death, which would give us the number 1,260. The El Salvador earthquakes that engendered a death toll that was 1 shy of 1,260 is pointing to the death of President Trump from a heart attack. This is the symbolic 1 death that is missing from this death toll in the El Salvador earthquakes. President Trump is the 45th president, and from the El Salvador earthquakes, the second of which was a 6.6 magnitude, it is 6,666 days, and then another 45 days to the 6.6 magnitude earthquake in El Salvador on May 30th, 2019 that killed 1 person due to a heart attack. This 6.6 magnitude earthquake in El Salvador connects with the other 6.6 magnitude earthquake in El Salvador through a 6,666 days connection. And this 1 heart attack death hints at the 1 death that is missing in the total of the El Salvador earthquakes in 2001 to equal 1,260. This 1 heart attack death due to the earthquake in El Salvador in 2019 and this 45 days connection confirms that this is pointing to the death of President Trump due to a heart attack, which will be the last Trump sign. 40 weeks is extremely prophetic because according to the medical profession, it symbolizes the average human gestation period, and Jesus used the metaphor of birth pains when his disciples asked him for the signs to look for of his return. Jesus used this metaphor of birth pains in context of earthquake signs, and so the following 40 weeks connection is a second witness confirmation of the prophetic significance of this earthquake in El Salvador. And as we can see, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. What makes it true is that it works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming matters as the Bible says is required. Exactly 40 weeks after this 6.6 magnitude earthquake in El Salvador that killed one person due to a heart attack was the day that extreme performer Nik Wallenda walked across the lake of fire on a volcano named Masaya, which hints at the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Masaya volcano is in Nicaragua, which sounds like Niagara, and Nik Wallenda is famous for having walked across Niagara Falls. Nik walked from Goat Island to Table Rock. Nik lives near Table Rock Lake in Missouri, and goat is Antichrist symbolism, and rock in the Bible symbolizes Jesus. Nik's tightrope and balancing beam with him at the center engenders a cross and symbolizes the price that Jesus paid for our sin so that we can escape the lake of fire. Nik's walk across the lake of fire on Masaya volcano in Nicaragua was exactly 40 weeks after the one heart attack death due to the 6.6 magnitude earthquake in El Salvador that was just off the coast of La Libertad, El Salvador. La Libertad is Spanish for freedom, and Masaya volcano is just a few miles away from this location. The El Salvador earthquakes were 6,666 days before the fires on the Royal Portico area of the Temple Mount and the Notre Dame Cathedral roof, and this in turn was 666 days before the impeachment trial of President Trump began, which is an extremely important sign. Trump's impeachment trial began on the 9th of February, and these extremely important signs that occurred on the 17th of February, Trump's casino collapse in 7 seconds, the death of Rush Limbaugh at 70 years old, and 70% of the nation being covered in snow, the first time this had happened in many years. These extremely important signs on the 9th and 17th of February are explained in detail in the must-watch Seinfeld prophecy video, the Lord of the Rings prophecy video, and the Exorcist prophecy video. And so I won't explain them again in this video. These signs on the 9th of February and the 17th of February give us the numbers 9 and 17. Recall that in the 2016 World Series, the Cubs and Indians were tied after 9 innings, and then there was the famous 17 minutes rain delay that preceded the end of the championship drought for the Chicago Cubs. In Genesis 9:17 is recorded God's sign regarding judgment, the rainbow. In the Bible, the breach of or the collapse of walls of security symbolized judgment on the city or nation. It was also the 9th of the month of Tammuz in the 5th century BC when the Babylonians breached the walls of security of Jerusalem, and the 17th of the month of Tammuz when the Romans breached the walls of security of Jerusalem. Trump's presidency is synonymous with his border wall of security, and in the Bible, the collapse of walls of security symbolized judgment on the city or nation. January 7th, 2020 was the date of the major destructive earthquake in Puerto Rico, which resulted in one death of a man when a wall collapsed on him. This was exactly 400 days before the beginning of Trump's impeachment on the 9th of February, and the number 400 symbolizes the Antichrist, as it was Pharaoh in Egypt that persecuted the Hebrews for 400 years before they were delivered to freedom. Egypt symbolizes the world, Pharaoh symbolizes the Antichrist, and the Hebrews' slavery in Egypt symbolizes our slavery to sin, which we can be freed from when we accept the freely given gift of forgiveness and repent and change our ways and follow Jesus. As will be explained in a few minutes, in the Bible, the security walls of Jericho collapsed in judgment due to an earthquake. A period of 50 years is extremely symbolic and prophetic in the Bible. February 9th was the 50th anniversary of the historically symbolic San Fernando earthquake. Trump is synonymous with his border wall of security, and the signs on February 9th involving President Trump regard Joshua and walls of security symbolism. This is why this 400 days connection between the earthquake that involved one death of a man due to a collapse of a wall is relevant. God gave Noah the number 120 in regards to the timing of the impending flood judgment, and exactly 120 weeks before this prophetic earthquake in Puerto Rico was the day that prophetic Hurricane Maria, which was Noah's flood symbolism, pummeled Puerto Rico. Pentecost symbolizes the church. Pentecost means 50th day. The number 50 symbolizes the Feast of Pentecost. Pentecost is also known as the Feast of Weeks, hence why 50 weeks connections are prophetic and they symbolize judgment warning for the church. But also importantly, 50 weeks is 350 days, and the 350th word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance is the word for to examine or judge. To judge of, estimate, determine the excellence or defects of a person or thing, as in the church, specifically the American Church of Laodicea. Nik Wallenda is famous for having walked across Niagara Falls. When he walked from Goat Island on the US side of the falls to Table Rock on the Canadian side of the falls. Goat symbolizes Antichrist and rock symbolizes Jesus. February 17th was exactly 50 weeks after Nik Wallenda walked across the lake of fire. This is serious judgment warning for the church, and as my other videos demonstrate, this particular connection of signs is serious judgment for the American Evangelical Church of Laodicea, that Jesus said he wants to vomit out of his mouth because it is lukewarm. And again, this Nik Wallenda Lake of Fire sign near El Salvador and La Libertad connects extremely prophetically to the Royal Portico area fire and the Notre Dame Cathedral 9-hour roof fire, which was symbolism for Jesus returning to cleanse his church, which is the purpose of the end times period. The date February 17th is 217, which hints at the two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart on 9/11. This is why, for example, it is 144,000 hours, a prominent and prophetic number from the book of Revelation, after 9/11 was the day of the Parkland, Florida shooting, in which 17 people were killed and 17 people were injured. A second witness confirmation to this was the Christchurch massacre shooting in the two mosques, in which 50 people were killed and 50 people were injured, and which was infamous for its 17 minutes of live video footage on social media. Exactly 2 months after the shooting in the two mosques was the Christchurch call to action, in which 17 nations met to discuss how to censor the internet. And given the context of this video, one of the ways in which the movie Back to the Future was a prophetic warning from God that pointed to 9/11 is the Twin Pines Mall sign and the Lone Pine Mall sign that reveal a 17 minutes difference. The Twin Pines Mall sign hints at the Twin Towers, and the Lone Pine Mall sign hints at the One World Tower that replaced the Twin Towers, and also the prophetic 2016 World Series between the Cubs and the Indians that went into extra innings after the game was tied after 9 innings, and then experienced a 17 minutes rain delay. The 9 innings and 17 minutes was one of countless pairings of the numbers 9 and 17 in God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which again points to Genesis 9:17 and God's sign regarding judgment, the rainbow. The following is a second witness confirmation to the 50 weeks connection between February 17th and the day that Nik Wallenda walked across the lake of fire. And the following is the reason for going into the explanation of how the date 217 hints at the two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart. And the following is one reason why one of the signs we received on this 217 date in 2021 was the collapse, as in the two towers that collapsed on 9/11, of Trump's historic and symbolic casino hotel tower in 7 seconds. In a prophecy in the book of Daniel, in the Bible, the number of 2300 days is associated with the Antichrist. February 17th was exactly 2300 days after Nik Wallenda performed his 2 tightrope walks across the towers of Chicago, which gave him 2 records in the Guinness Book of World Records. The 500th word in the Greek New Testament, G500 in Strong's Concordance, is the word for Antichrist. Exactly 500 days after Nik Wallenda walked across the towers of Chicago was the day that lightning struck Trump Tower in Chicago. Lightning struck Trump Tower in Chicago on what is called Super Tuesday in 2016, when it became clear that President Trump would win the nomination for presidential candidate of the Republican Party. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. Exactly 500 days before lightning struck Trump Tower in Chicago on Super Tuesday was the day that Nik Wallenda walked across the towers in Chicago while engendering a Christian cross with his tightrope and balancing pole. 500 days symbolizes the Antichrist, and 2300 days, which also symbolizes the Antichrist, after Nik Wallenda walked across the towers of Chicago. And God uses the city of Chicago to reveal the identity of the Antichrist, Barack Obama, who is from Chicago. And in God's signs, God juxtaposes President Trump and Barack Obama, and Barack Obama's name in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. The name Barack Obama in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. Barak means lightning, Bama, the high place, which is a metaphor for heaven used in Isaiah chapter 14 when it says that Lucifer fell from the high place, and the high place was a metaphor for the false religious worship to the false gods that the ancient Jews would do on the tops of mountains. And in Aramaic, the language Jesus would have spoken, the word from is O, hence Barack Obama, lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he said this anyway, knowing that it would confuse us because there would be a famous president named Barack Obama, or he revealed the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. And therefore, this is 100% rock-solid confirmation that the Antichrist is Barack Obama. And therefore, any kind of speculation regarding Macron, Emmanuel Macron, or Prince Charles, etc., is completely unnecessary and unfounded, and is actually stemming from a unfortunate misunderstanding of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, which says to these people that have this incorrect understanding that for some reason the identity of the Antichrist is unknowable until some sort of date when he steps on the Temple Mount or something to that effect. That's completely untrue. God has definitely revealed the identity of the 2 Antichrists, Pope Francis and Barack Obama, and Jesus saying that he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven is one of the 100% proofs of this. Again, the number 400 symbolizes the Antichrist, and exactly 400 days back from the day Trump's impeachment trial began was the day of the prophetic earthquake in Puerto Rico, in which the collapse of a wall killed 1 person. This earthquake also caused the collapse of one of Puerto Rico's most famous sites, Window Rock, and also destruction of an historic church. Rock symbolizes Jesus, and this was judgment warning for the church. 10 days later, on the 17th of January, a huge fireball flew at low altitude directly over the capital of Puerto Rico, San Juan, and landed in the ocean just miles north of San Juan. The earthquake on the 7th and the fireball on the 17th gives us the 7th and 17th. And in the account of Noah's flood, it began in chapter 7, verse 17. The flood also ended on the 17th day of the 7th month. Again, God gave Noah the number 100 120 in regards to the timing of the impending flood judgment, and exactly 120 weeks prior to this earthquake in Puerto Rico was the day that prophetic Hurricane Maria pummeled Puerto Rico. Prior to Hurricane Maria hitting Puerto Rico, the media reported how it had been dancing with Hurricane Jose in the Atlantic. Maria and Jose are Spanish for Mary and Joseph. One of the things Hurricane Maria is known for was the damage it caused to the water dam that caused an emergency evacuation of 70,000 people in the middle of the night due to the threat of this dam bursting forth its waters. The threat of the dam bursting forth its waters was Noah's flood symbolism, and so was the evacuation. And the evacuation symbolized the rescue of Noah and his family. The names Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Joseph give this threat of the dam's water breaking the symbolism of a woman's water breaking when she is giving birth. This emergency evacuation in the middle of the night due to the threat of the dam bursting forth its waters occurred on the same night as the, quote, great sign in heaven, quote, that is described in the Bible in the book of Revelation chapter 12 that depicted a woman giving birth, which was a once in human history alignment of the stars that fulfilled the sign in Revelation chapter 12, which depicts a woman giving birth. This sign in Revelation chapter 12 symbolizes the rapture event at the last trump and at the beginning of the Antichrist's rule of 1,260 days on May 1st, 2021. There have been only 2 7.0 or greater earthquakes that have hit Puerto Rico in recorded history, and only one of the 2 was destructive. It triggered a 20-foot tsunami and killed as many as 118 people, with millions of dollars in damages. The combined effects of the earthquake and tsunami made it one of the worst natural disasters that have struck the island. This earthquake that occurred in Spanish America occurred in 1918, the year of the Spanish flu pandemic. These signs in Puerto Rico that have been explained give us Noah's flood symbolism, and the historic barge got stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River in 1918, which involved the most dramatic rescue in Niagara Falls history, and all of this was Noah's flood symbolism. In other words, when the barge crashes over Niagara Falls as predicted, it will be confirmation that it is pointing to coronavirus as being part of the end times judgment that is currently in the process of giving rise to and paving the way for the Antichrist. 2300 days symbolizes the Antichrist, and exactly 2300 days before Hurricane Maria pummeled Puerto Rico was the day that Nik Wallenda walked across the towers in Puerto Rico. He retraced the same exact walk that caused the death of his famous grandfather. Nik's walks engender a cross with his tightrope and balancing pole. The number 400 symbolizes the Antichrist, and exactly 400 weeks after Nik Wallenda walked across the towers in Puerto Rico, a 20-foot barnacle cross mysteriously washed up on the shore of a beach in South Florida, in the same county as the Parkland, Florida shooting, which, as was just explained, occurred 144,000 hours after 9/11, after it had been blown into the ocean by Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. The next day was the 2019 Super Bowl, which pointed to 9/11 and the 20-foot steel beam cross that was mysteriously found standing upright in the debris field. In Bible prophecy, 7 years symbolizes the end times period of judgment, and 7 months connections symbolize 7 years. A prophetic 7 months after this was the day of the conception boat fire on Labor Day, which symbolizes a birth through conception and labor pains, on a boat that was anchored 20 feet off the shore of Santa Cruz Island. Cruz is Spanish for cross. The conception boat fire occurred 20 feet from Santa Cruz Island and connects prophetically to the 20-foot barnacle cross that washed up on the shore of the county of the Parkland, Florida shooting, and the Parkland, Florida shooting was perpetrated by a man named Nicholas Cruz. Again, Cruz is Spanish for cross. The name of the sheriff that was involved with this shooting that was largely criticized for being derelict is Scott Israel, and the massacre occurred in building number 12, and the number 12 symbolizes the church. Nicholas Cruz is one of 7 men named Nick that God has used, including Nik Wallenda, who engenders a cross, with his tightrope and balancing pole to point to the Nicolaitan doctrine and works of the American Evangelical Church. It is very important that you learn what God has identified through his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections as being the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. This is explained in the must-watch The Big Picture of Signs video series part 1. I will leave a link below in the description box to this video, or you can find it in the playlist. The Big Picture of Signs video part 1 has been turned into simply the Big Picture of Signs video that is pointing to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. Look for that video, or I will leave the link in the description box below. And also, make sure that you watch the 23 church signs video. The connection of Nicholas Cruz to this conception boat fire is very relevant because this conception boat fire was also a judgment warning for the church. It pointed to the parable of the sleeping bridesmaids, in that 5 of the crew on the upper deck of the boat were awake and were able to escape to another boat named the Grape Escape, while the other passengers below deck were sleeping and all of them perished. This pointed to the parable of the sleeping bridesmaids and Jesus' command to remain awake, so that when he returns for his church in the rapture, those that are awake will be able to enter the wedding banquet, while the remaining half of the church will be left behind. This conception boat fire was a sign that was expected in advance, because it was a prophetic 40 weeks before Pentecost in 2020, as Pentecost symbolizes the church, and fire symbolizes Pentecost, as tongues of fire came down on the disciples in the upper room, hence this fire on the conception boat, and those that were on the upper deck that escaped. A metaphor for the rapture escape of the church is a birth, hence why the boat is named Conception, and the date of this conception fire was Labor Day, and this connection of 40 weeks to Pentecost, because as was mentioned, 40 weeks is prophetic because it symbolizes a birth and the birth pains that Jesus spoke about. That is a metaphor for the end times period. This video has explained the trail of signs in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that is leading to the day that President Trump will die from a heart attack, which will be the last Trump sign. And this video has explained the trail of signs that led to February 9th and the beginning of Trump's impeachment trial, the signs for which are explained in other videos. And February 9th was 666 days after the Notre Dame Cathedral roof fire and the fire on the royal portico area of the Temple Mount. And this was in turn 6,666 days after the prophetic earthquakes in El Salvador, and it was also 1,260 days after the Kansas City Royals won the World Series, 30 years exactly after the other time they won the World Series, which happens to coincide with the baseball prophecy that is described in the movie Back to the Future. Relative to President Trump, all of this is communicating the death of a king, the death of President Trump, God's King Cyrus and King Jehu from the Bible, and the 1,259 deaths in the El Salvador earthquakes that was one shy of 1,260 deaths, as was explained, is pointing to the death of President Trump from a heart attack. All right, this story that is being explained in this video, this Seinfeld basketball prophecy trail of signs that is leading to the death of President Trump, isn't finished. The trail leads to this date, as I have demonstrated, February 9th, and the beginning of Trump's impeachment trial, which was focused on his final last call to march at 1:10 p.m., which, by the way, was the 50th anniversary of the most significant earthquake in U.S. history, the San Fernando earthquake, and had that earthquake gone for 3 more seconds, many thousands of people would have died due to the collapse of a dam. Anyway, this February 9th date connects with exactly 80 weeks to the day that President Trump will die, on August 23rd. This 80 weeks connection is so profound. It is so amazing. And it's not very much more to explain. However, it's necessary to leave it in another video on another channel. It cannot be explained in this video for practical reasons. So what I suggest is that you watch the explanation, because the story is only half done. This is really, really important, this 80 weeks connection. And so to watch this all right, as you know by now, this part of the video was recorded long ago, and this last segment of it was recorded in early or summer of 2023, or sorry, 22. The 80 weeks connection is amazing, and the date, August 23rd, 2022, was a step in the trail. It was the day that Mrs. Wall, from the National Archives, the letter was released talking about Trump having 700 classified documents. But anyway, it's a long story, and I've got to cut this video off. But that date, August 23rd, 2022, connects with exactly 63 weeks to the date it is predicted that President Trump will die on November 7th, 2023. And 63 weeks hints at 3 6s, the number of the Antichrist, but also it is 3 times 3 times 7, which hints at 3 sets of 7. And if it wasn't, I'm sure it's been explained already in this video, Trump is symbolic of 3 sets of 7 because of the 3 sets of 7 that the Israelites enacted before the walls of security collapsed after they blew trumpets. So 63 weeks is 3 times 3 times 7 weeks exactly. So there you have this trail of signs that I'm explaining in this video connect ultimately to November 7th, 2023. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.